If you're looking for the best vegan vanilla cake for an upcoming birthday or celebration, I've got the perfect recipe for you. Welcome back to my channel, bakers. I'm Angela from Bake Angel, and today I'm going to walk you through the entire process of how to make and decorate the perfect vegan vanilla cake. Now, if you're new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you can keep up to date with all the new videos on my channel, and make sure that you stick around for my handy cake decorating tutorial at the end of this video. Now, as you can see here, we're starting with greasing and lining our 3 6-inch baking pans. I'm just greasing them with some plant-based butter and then adding a circle of parchment paper to them. And this is going to ensure that once our lovely cakes are baked, they'll be easy to remove from the cake pans. And now we're going to start working on our cake batter. Now, there are 9 ingredients that we're using today, and if you want to find out more details about the background for this recipe and why I'm using certain ingredients, make sure you check out the link in the description below, when you can go to my website bakeangel.com and get the full printable recipe and more details on the origins of this cake as well. So we're starting off by mixing a few of those in our stand mixer. I'm using applesauce here to add moisture to our cake instead of egg, and also some plant-based yogurt as well. I find that by adding the yogurt to my cake, this is what you would see as a replacement to sour cream, which is quite popular in vanilla cakes, just for that nice fluffiness and that moisture to keep everything nice and light as well. Of course, because we're making a vanilla cake, I'm adding my favorite flavoring, which is vanilla bean paste. And then you're just going to give that a stir, not for too long in your mixer. It is going to look kind of curdled at this stage as well, but don't be alarmed. That is perfectly normal for vegan cakes. As you can see here, it does look kind of weird, but once we start adding in our dry ingredients, it will come together beautifully. Now, for our dry ingredients, I have a combination of cake flour, baking powder and salt. If you don't have cake flour readily available, you can also find a link in the descriptions of how you can make your own. And I'm just adding that into stages. I tend to not want to overmix any cake batters that I make because I want them to retain that light, fluffy consistency that I keep talking about. And by not overbeating it, that means you're not going to overactivate the gluten in the flour either. And as we're using cake flour, I should mention that that's actually got a lower protein content than traditional all-purpose flour. So you will see me using that quite often in my cake and cupcake recipes on my channel, just because I find they give me a much nicer finish. You'll also see that I'm alternating back and forth between my dry ingredients and my milk. This is a plant-based milk that I'm using, and my preference when I'm adding milk to any batter is to use almond milk, because I find that that gives me a nice creamy texture as well. Of course, you can substitute that with whichever plant-based milk you prefer, and I go into substitutions in a lot more detail on my website, so make sure you check out that link below. So this is going to have just a little bit more of a mix to make sure that everything is combining really nicely. And let's have a look at it now. You can see it looks completely different from when we looked at it earlier and it looked curdled. It just looks like normal cake batter now. So again, don't be alarmed when that happens. It just is what happens to the ingredients when you've added so much wet ingredients in one go and haven't added any of the dry ingredients to combine it all together. Let's move that mixer out of the way, give the counter a quick wipe, and we can go ahead and start filling our cake pans. Now, I should have mentioned as well that my oven is preheating. It's always the very first thing that I do when I'm going to bake anything, is to turn my oven on so it heats up for a good amount of time before we pop our things in the oven. And now you can see that I'm using my trusty ice cream scoop to fill my pans. The reason I like to use ice cream scoops whenever I'm doing cakes or cupcakes is that I can make sure that my mix is even. So instead of having to weigh it, I can just make sure I use the same number of scoops for each of my pans, and I'll get a really nice even bake then as well. I'm going to give that bowl a last scrape down to make sure we haven't missed any bits of that yummy cake batter, and then we'll be ready to finish distributing the batter in those pans. So you can see here, there's a few different methods you can use to do that. You can pick it up, you can tap the sides, you can tap it on the counter. Gravity is going to do its work for you and actually spread everything out. So you're not actually spreading it out with a spatula here. We're just letting it fall on its own from tapping the pans around. That's perfect. So now we're going to pop those in the oven. Again, my oven is at 350 degrees Fahrenheit and they bake for about 20 to 25 minutes. When they come out, they look like this. They are slightly paler than you would find with more traditional cakes that have dairy in them, but I really like that look with this cake. It is a nice pale cake as well. These smell amazing and they've got a nice firm touch to them too. So while those cakes cool, we're now going to go on and make our vegan vanilla buttercream. I really love this buttercream and use it in a lot of my bakes because it is nice and smooth and silky and it comes together really quickly as well. If you are coating cakes with it, it's great to put on the sides and top of your cake, and it also pipes really well. So make sure you stick around for the end of this tutorial where I'll actually show you how to just do a very quick decoration with some of our icing to finish off the cake nicely. So you can see here I started off by mixing my butter and now we're adding in our icing sugar. I have a touch of salt in there as well, just to cut back on the sweetness, because there is such a lot of icing sugar needed for this buttercream recipe. So keep going, adding your icing sugar in stages. I like to do that so I don't get that really big puff of icing sugar that goes everywhere. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had that happen. I know I've certainly had it happen a few times and it definitely makes a big mess. So again, I just like to add it in stages. I tend to give it a bit of a stir with my spatula first before I actually get the mixer to stir it in as well. This is coming together really, really nicely, but you can see we still have a lot of icing sugar to add in. So we'll just keep going. And now we are also going to add in our vanilla bean paste. So if you wanted to swap this out for extract or a different flavor, you would just use the same quantity. And I'm using about a teaspoon here, which I find is sufficient when I use vanilla bean paste. Let's give that a quick mix again to combine it. And another scrape down as well. So this buttercream does take a little bit of a while to make, but you'll notice as well that I'm using the paddle attachment here and not the whisk attachment. That's also partly because we don't want to add too much air into our buttercream. And then another quick scrape down, and next we're going to go back to turning the mixer on and we're going to start to add our liquid to it. This is quite a thick buttercream if you don't add any liquid to it. I'm just adding a small amount of plant-based milk here, and you could absolutely swap that out with water if you didn't want to use a milk of any sorts. It isn't going to change the consistency at all. And of course, if you go to my website, you can get the full printable recipe for this buttercream as well. Doesn't that look perfect? It is so smooth. It's a really nice pale color as well, and it's going to be perfect for decorating our cake. In total, this recipe makes just over 1,300 grams of buttercream as well, which is quite a lot. What I do actually tend to do is, once I've iced my cake, if I have any left that I don't want to use on cupcakes or another cake within a few days of making it, then I'll actually pop it in the fridge and it's good in there for about 2 weeks. You can also freeze it as well if you want to. Okay, now the fun bit, and I know this is the bit that gives a lot of bakers anxiety, and that's decorating the cake. So first of all, you can see here, I'm going to use a turntable to make it easier for me. I just popped a little bit of sellotape in the middle of my turntable, and then I'm adding my cake boards onto it. So this makes sure that that cake isn't going to slide around when I'm decorating it. If you've ever had that happen to you, it's a nightmare, isn't it, when the cake starts sliding around? But it's going to stay nice and still here for us. Let's just unwrap our cakes. They've been sat for a while, so I'm just going to peel that parchment off of them from the pan, and then we can start to build and fill our cake. For that, I'm going to use some of the buttercream that I popped in a tipless piping bag, and we're also going to use some homemade jam as well. And if you haven't seen my jam recipe, take a look at the link above for that and see how easy it is to make your own 2-ingredient jam. So first of all, you can see I added a little bit of buttercream to that center board, popped my cake on it, and that's going to act as the glue to help that stick to the board as well. Now we're just going to pipe a dam of icing on each cake layer, which will help contain the jam that goes in the middle of it. This is a great way to make sure that your center filling doesn't spill over the sides of the cake as well. And then I'm just using my tapered spatula to spread that around. You could put any sort of filling here, and if you didn't want to use the jam, you could absolutely just do buttercream for the whole thing as well. We're going to go ahead and do the same thing for the next layer. And I should mention here too, you'll notice that I didn't actually trim my cakes. Now they are pretty flat, but if your cakes aren't when you take them out of the oven and you have a bit of a dome in them, by all means go ahead and just level them off with a knife or a cake leveler before you start to stack them. For my final top, you'll notice I've put my cake on upside down, and the reason we do that is that the crumbs on the bottom of the cake are much firmer and they won't actually come off of the cake when you start icing it. So that's a top tip whenever you are icing cakes. Always put the top layer on in reverse so you've got that really nice closed crumb on top. Okay, so now we're ready to crumb coat our cake, or dirty icing, whichever you call it. Let me know in the comments, what do you call this? My favorite tool when I'm icing cakes, as you can see here, I have a couple of spatulas and I have a cake scraper as well. I'm going to start with my large angled spatula. Sometimes these are called crank spatulas, tapered spatulas, and offset spatulas. Whichever you call it, I find that these are so much easier because you're not having to bend your arm into really awkward angles to do the cake. I always like to start with the top first as well, and I always put a big dollop on and then spread that off and go from there down to the sides. If you prefer to do the sides first, that's absolutely fine. It really doesn't matter. Cake icing is one of those things that you'll find you get into a routine yourself the more that you do it, and there's no wrong way to do this. Just remember that this is the crumb coat though, so we're not looking for a full coverage here. You will still see some of the cake actually peeking through the buttercream, and that's perfectly fine. Some people call this more of a naked cake look, and you could actually leave it like that as well if you want that sort of look for your cake. But we will actually be adding another layer of buttercream once this one has been finished off, and I'm actually going to pop it in the fridge as well just to firm it up. I find it so much easier to ice a cake when it's cold, so popping it in the fridge for about 30 minutes or even in the freezer for 10 if you've got room will be perfect, just to make the next stage a lot easier for you. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm just going to go around and tidy up that top edge a little bit. Now, if you didn't want a sharp edge, you wouldn't need to do that. There's actually a trend out there at the moment where you leave the top of the edge looking quite rustic. I think that looks pretty nice too. But we're going to leave it like this and pop it in the fridge and then come back and add our second coat. Okay, so give your cake a press down. You can see that tape is still on the turntable. So give it a press so that it holds it in place for us again. And now we're going to go back and just do our second layer of buttercream. Again, if you like the naked sort of look for your cakes, then you don't have to do this step and you can skip it entirely. But we are just going to go round and fill in all those gaps and make sure we've got a really nice smooth covering for the cake so that we can then go ahead and decorate it. Just smoothing off that top edge again as well, and then I'm going to clean off my spatula, give it a bit of a spin around, and then we're going to do just a quick spiral. So I'm holding it at an angle, slightly touching the cake and just moving my spatula in as we turn the cake on the turntable. Really quick and easy way to decorate the top of a cake and just give it a little bit more interest than having flat buttercream. So this is the fun bit. This is the bit the kids always love to help with as well. I'm going to add sprinkles to the bottom of my cake. And a top tip when you do this, make sure you pop your cake on a tray so that any of the sprinkles that actually don't stick to the cake, you can reuse at a later date. Just going around slightly then, tapping everything into place, add in a few more sprinkles where they've missed a little bit. And I think that looks really nice. You could do this in all sorts of colors and different sizes and shapes of sprinkles as well. But this is just a cute and easy technique that I'm showing you that you can try at home. Next, we're going to go and add some swirls, and I've colored up some icing with blue food coloring. I have a video for that if you're not sure how to color your icing. And we're using a 1M piping tip, which is a large star tip. We're just going to do some basic swirls, kind of like the Mr. Whippy ice cream swirls. So you just want to hold the tip slightly above the surface, squeeze and pull up as you take the pressure off the bag. And you can see how quick and easy this comes together. And it just finishes off the cake really, really nicely as well. Now we're going to add a few more sprinkles onto those little swirls that we just added, and our cake will be done. It really doesn't get any simpler than that for cake decorating. And finally, I'm using a dry pastry brush just to brush off any of those loose sprinkles that are on the board. And you can see here that I've actually knocked the cake a little bit, and we've got a couple of sprinkles on the side of the cake and a little dent as well. Don't worry if this ever happens to you. It's just buttercream, and all we're going to do is get a little bit of extra buttercream on a tapered spatula and just cover that in and then smooth the area over as well. Just be very careful and light in your movements when you're doing this, and use the turntable to turn the cake for you to make it easier. I think that looks pretty good. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. So thanks for sticking around. I know this has been quite an in-depth tutorial. For my final piece, I thought I would show you a great way of cutting round cakes to maximize the number of slices that you can get from it. So instead of cutting it into triangles, if you actually cut it on the side, as you can see here, you can get a lot more pieces from it. So a 6-inch round cake would normally give you 8 slices if you cut it triangularly, but you can actually get about 20 slices when you do it this way. And I think those nice little straight slices are actually really great for a kid's birthday party or even on a small wedding cake. I really hope you've enjoyed watching this tutorial for my vegan vanilla cake. Let me know in the comments below what you think of it and if you're going to have a go at decorating in this style. And make sure you check out the rest of the baking videos and my buttercream ideas on my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.